Hi everyone, how are you doing and welcome back. So you're new to Battlefield 5, first off welcome, I hope you enjoy your time here. This game has had its ups and its downs, but at its core it's a real solid game and I do believe you'll have some fun with it. So today's video is going to bring you up to speed with everything that's Battlefield 5 related. So once you jump in, you kind of have an understanding of kind of how the game works and kind of its quirks and kind of how to get about it. So without wasting any more time, let's jump into it. Right, okay. Before jumping into sort of talking about classes and the other aspects of Battlefield 5, there's a couple of settings I just want to show you guys that you can have a sort of play around with and see what works for you. There's some for both PC and console. There's something sort of specific to one or other of the platforms, so something you guys can both do. So if you go to options and gameplay, and the first one is kill feed, something that can really help with sort of situational awareness and kind of making it easier for you to know when enemies are nearby. I think the default is set to all, but if you set it to nearby, it will only show you sort of the kill feed and kills that happen around you. So instead of like knowing if somebody's been killed over by the E flag and you're over by A, it will only show people that have been like sort of killed or being killed sort of around by you. So it can make it really specific and just help you like know that enemies are either nearby or your teammates sort of engaged someone and killed someone as well nearby. Also kill log, have it set to icon and name for me personally. Once again, this helps it be a bit more specific, so I know if somebody's got an SMG and it's a Suomi and I'm running around with an LMG or some like real slow rate of fire gun, I might need to be a bit more tactical about it, you know, and get the drop on them instead of just running straight in and kind of getting melted by a real high rate of fire weapon. And another setting I recommend having a play around with is the crosshair and hit indicators. The default's white on the crosshair. Once again, it can get lost. Sometimes I find it in the background, so looking towards the sun or buildings and stuff like that, it can sort of get lost just briefly. And in a game where sort of milliseconds count between like life and death, it can make all the difference. So by having it set to kind of a colour that you wouldn't normally see in the battlefield, it can just help you with when having to like sort of acquire the target and get your sights on the target. And then obviously hit indicator, I have it set to sort of once again a distinctive colour. Just helps me know that I've hit an enemy, and I'm not kind of like having to like squint my eyes looking for the white sort of hit indicator. I can just have it set to green, like this lime green here, and it will just help me sort of identify that I've hit enemies. The headshot colour is a slightly thicker hit indicator as well, but you can also change that colour to something if you want to be a bit more specific. And I recommend sort of having the kill colour set to red, just because it's, you know, death, danger, and all that stuff. And then armor hit indicator, I kind of recommend having it the same colour as these, just so that way then you don't really have to think about it. You just you know when you see sort of a whatever, like for me, I know when I see green that I've hit something, and then when I see red, I've killed them. So that's it for the gameplay and the options, and then we'll move on now to sort of jumping into the classes and kind of breaking them down a bit. Moving on to classes, Battlefield 5 still has the classic 4-class system. There is some variation though. The engineer is now called assault and they no longer repair vehicles. That's a role as the support class, but we'll get into that in a second. But for the most part, they're still the same. So if you've played sort of previous entries, then you'll feel right at home. And if you're new, they're easy to pick up. I have done a few guides, so in-depth guides on each of the classes, so I'll link them in the description and also the comments down below for you to check out after this video. So to start off, we'll go over the medic class. As it sounds, revive and heal teammates, keep them in the fight, you know, keep them all supplied and being able to push forward and sort of complete the objective. So to do this, you do have sort of two options. There's the med pack and the med crate. Me personally, I take the med pack just because with the crate, players have to like look down and interact with it to pick a bandage up, whereas with the med pack you can just spam it out by pressing either your keybind or the buttons on console and just do it that way. I have found that players tend not to look down for the crate, just because it's not really marked on the map and it is sometimes hard to see. Plus it is sometimes finicky as well to place. So if I had to choose, it'd be the med pack. If you're wondering how do I know if people need health and or reviving, this is the symbol here to know that somebody is wanting health, and then this is the symbol to know if somebody needs reviving on the floor. With reviving as well, you can use smokes. I definitely recommend sort of taking smoke grenade and the smoke launcher. Just helps so much with being able to sort of safely revive teammates, and also you can use it to like flank the enemy and push the enemy and block lines of sight. I have done a video on that as well, which I'll link in the description and in the comments down below. Next up, we've got the support class. As it sounds, your role is to support your team in any way possible. So whether that be suppressing fire, repairing, giving them ammo. So with giving them ammo, there's two ways you can do this, a bit like the medic class. You have the ammo pouch and the ammo crate. This time it's a bit different, however. The ammo pouch only really supplies the primary and secondary ammo, whereas the ammo crate resupplies both primary, secondary, and gadget ammo. But the gadget ammo is one at a time. So if you have like a rocket launcher, it will give you one rocket. So for me personally, I switch between the two. So if it's like sort of a close quarters map where there's not really any vehicles, then I'll probably run the ammo pouch. Whereas if it's got sort of a more vehicles centered map where there's quite a few tanks and enemy vehicles, I might run the ammo crate just to help sort of the assaults and also other supports that are running sort of anti-vehicle gadgets, being able to take them out if we're sort of away from an ammo station. So that's kind of what I'd do in that situation for the support. And if you're wondering how do I know somebody needs ammo, it's this symbol here. And also, like I mentioned earlier on, the support class can repair. So if you pull out sort of your hammer, which enables you to build fortifications, and then just go up to a vehicle, it will switch from a hammer to a repair tool. You haven't got to like take a gadget or anything like that. The third class is the assault class, and your role is to damage and harass enemy vehicles. So by using sort of the gadgets at your disposal, you know, you want to keep the enemy vehicles occupied on you and away from your team that are like attacking the points, and enable your team that way then to push up and capture points. Because in this game, a good tank driver can sort of lock down a good area if there's sort of infantry supporting them. So you want to make sure that you've got the tank sort of occupied on you and not looking towards the objectives or sort of defending an objective. And finally, we have the Recon Class. So your role on the battlefield is to sort of give an overlay of what's going on to your team and squad, support your squad, and also sort of harass enemies with sort of the weapons at your disposal, so whether it be sort of the semi-autos or the long-range sniper rifles, you know, using those to sort of harass the enemies at a distance and allow your team to once again push up and also counter-snipe enemy snipers. So by giving an overlay of the battlefield, what I mean by this is you can get access to flares, and these flares can sort of spot enemies on the map for your team to then be able to take out. So they're really good for sort of putting on objectives and also sort of choke points, and let your team know that there are enemies there if they get spotted. And by supporting your squad, I mean putting down spawn beacons that are sort of close to the objective but hidden, to once again enable your teammate and squad mates to spawn on it and be able to sort of get into the action and take the objective quicker. Another thing in general for the classes is their weapons. So with the weapons, there's sort of 4 perks. So from levels 1 to 4, you unlock sort of a perk for each weapon, in the sense that there's sort of 2 ways you can kind of go left or right down the tree. And sort of after you select perk 1, it enables you to you can either choose to go to the right path or the left path, and then at the bottom, then you at perk 4 you can go either back to the left side or back to the right side. So there's a bit of customization there. Plenty of guides out there for each weapon and sort of the best attachments to take for each one. I've done a few videos on sort of a few of the weapons, but there's plenty of other guides out there as well for you to check out and sort of get the sort of the best setup for the weapon that you're using. And finally, each class has access to 2 perks, and they're very different to one another and sort of complement different play styles. So once again, in the videos that I've done breakdowns in each class, I've covered these, so just check the description and the comments to sort of get a more in-depth look at them. But this is just so you know, because I have some people that don't know that they actually have access to these kind of perks, and they can really change the play style if depending on which one you use. Now moving on, this is where Battlefield has its own sort of unique twist on the FPS genre. On the bigger game modes, you get access to many different types of vehicles. Starting it off, we've got the tank class. I've done a full-on detailed breakdown of this, so I'll link it once again in the description and the comments down below for you to check out after this video, so bring you up to speed with the tanks. But this is just going to be a brief overview. So starting off, we've got the light tank. It's fast, there's not much armor to it, and it's more geared towards anti-infantry. So if you're on a sort of a real small map and you can kind of dart between the buildings, or you know, a wide open map and you want to use that speed to flank behind the enemy and stuff like that, that's the tank they go for. Medium, it's a mix of the both, so it's a bit slower than the light tank, but it has a bit more armor, and it's geared to both sort of tanks and anti-infantry. And then next up, we've got the heavy tank. This is slow, it's got lots of armor, and it packs a punch, and it's more geared towards sort of tank on tank combat. And you can do some infantry, but because it's quite slow, you need sort of the support of your team around you, because you can get sort of overwhelmed, but it does take quite a lot to take it down. You also got access to amphibious tanks, so more so on the Pacific maps. Some tanks you can take in the water and once again use it to sort of flank around enemies that way. And finally, we've got the AA tank. It's the anti-air tank, so you can sort of change and pick this over sort of the other tanks, and then it allows you to sort of take out the air in the sky. But do watch out, because they are sort of a hot target for pilots to take out straight away, just because they can cause quite a bit of damage. Something to be aware of as well is that tanks have weak spots. So if you're doing the engagement, you want to take advantage of these, and if you're being engaged, you want to defend these. So the weak spots are the sides and the back where sort of the more damage can be done to a tank, you want to sort of point the front towards the enemy, as that is where it has the most armor. So within this as well, certain parts of the tank can be disabled. So if you shoot the tracks out, it means the tank goes a lot slower and sort of turns that direction. If you shoot the engine out, the tank goes a lot slower. And if you shoot the turret, it makes the turret turn a lot slower. So it makes it harder sort of to follow moving targets. So this is just something to be aware of, whether you're engaging or being engaged as a tanker. It's time to head to the skies. Although I don't really have much to say on this, as I'm not really a pilot, but there are some really solid guys out there that you should check out. So just type in like Battlefield 5 how to pilot or how to fly, and there's some really solid guys out there from some really good pilots. But there are sort of several types of planes, just to give you a bit of info. So you got bombers, which are more centered towards, you know, bombing a certain area, whether it be sort of vehicles or a group of infantry. So they're slow and sort of take quite a bit to take them down, but they can pack a punch as well, a bit like the heavy tanks. You also got ground to air, so these planes are more focused on sort of diving down and engaging either infantry or vehicles. Then you've also got air-to-air vehicles as well, which sort of rollers to take on and sort of disable other planes in the sky. And if you're new to flying in general, you can go to the training area, go to and practice your flying, and sort of get a hang of the controls and sort of try new things out without the sort of fear, I guess, of kind of getting absolutely deleted by a ace pilot, really. So it can give you just a good idea and kind of get a feel of, and kind of practice some maneuvers. The final type of vehicles are your transports. These are mainly found either in your home base or on the majority of flags around the battlefield, and there's sort of several different types that you can be used to get around the map. So jeeps and bikes are sort of used primarily to get around the map, and only your squad mates can spawn on it and not your team. And these are lightly armoured, so I'd only really use them for getting around the map. You can shoot out of them, and the jeeps do have sort of mounted MGs on them, but they are quite exposed and do become kind of a hot target for both tanks and infantry players if they get seen. Next up is troop transport. As the name suggests, both teammates and squad mates can spawn on these, so it's best to use these to get behind the enemy and allow your team to spawn on you, sort of backcap the enemy flags. But you do need to be sneaky with these, as the enemy do like to take these out, as they can cause quite a bit of damage to their team. And on some of the Pacific maps and sort of the normal maps as well, you get access to boats, and these can also be used as a spawn point or just ways of getting around the map as well. But once again, they are lightly armoured, don't have any weapons on it, but infantry can shoot out of them. But once again, they are sort of prime targets for both infantry and vehicles. So if you use it as a spawn point, make sure to try and like get it up on the beach and kind of hide it in a bush or something. Now that I've shown you kind of all the different types of vehicles and kind of their roles on the battlefield, I'm just going to quickly touch upon sort of resupplying and repairing sort of your tanks and your planes. So throughout the map, there are sort of scattered vehicle resupply stations, and then these can be used to sort of get ammo and repair your tanks. They're found on the majority of flags and also in your home base as well, and this is where you can repair your tanks if no sort of support classes around, or where you can resupply your ammo once you've run out of it. The plane one is a bit different, where it's sort of still in your home base, but it's sort of two poles that are kind of set back behind the infantry spawn, and it's kind of clearly marked, and so just all you have to do is sort of fly through it. Whereas in the tank, you have to sort of pull up to it and then hit the button that it prompts you to hit to sort of resupply and start the repair. As you see here, also infantry have access to sort of resupply stations. So with the ammo one here, as you can see, I take the ammo and a sort of cooldown timer appears. This is only specific to this one. So if I go to like a different resupply station on a different point, I can take ammo from that one without having to wait for the cooldown. But if I came back to this one, I'll have to wait for the cooldown to sort of resupply. And that's the same for the medic one as well. So to finish up with this video, just going to go some game modes. I recommend you sort of play first before jumping into sort of the flagship game mode of Conquest, and then I'll give you some tips along with that to sort of help you stay alive longer and sort of navigate and kind of what to look out for on the battlefield. So starting off, I do recommend you sort of jump in a team deathmatch for your first few games. These are sort of smaller versions of certain parts of the Conquest map, so it might be like either like a bit of a village, or you know, just like a bit of a like another part of the map. It's sort of like the main hub areas that you'd find on Conquest, but just made for that certain area and for team deathmatch only. And this will just be able to get sort of a feel of the battlefield movement and how sort of each class kind of works, and kind of get a feel for it before then jumping into the Conquest modes. But doing this jump though, it can be a bit daunting and a bit like, whoa, like what have I stepped into, just because Conquest, you know, it is 32v32 players, and it is on like massive open maps and with sort of multiple capture points and many different ways you can get shot from or flanked from. But with these tips, it should hopefully just help make it that bit easier and allow you to get sort of used to sort of playing Battlefield, because this is where the bread and butter is essentially, and kind of what makes Battlefield, in my opinion, is these bigger game modes. before we get into these sort of last few clips, I have made a video. I know I'm still promoting these videos, but they are really useful in my opinion. Sort of staying alive longer in Battlefield. So I'll link that video in the comments and also the description as well for you to check out after this, just to get sort of a more in-depth and sort of cover more. Since I cover more tips in that video than I kind of will in this sort of section here. But first off, you will die a lot. That's just a given. Like when I first started playing back in Bad Company 2, I had no idea what was going on. I was getting shot from the side, front, back, you know, up low, down low, you name it. I was just getting domed from every direction. But these are some tips that will hopefully help sort of prevent that as much. But just going into it, just know that you will sort of get. There will be a few times where you do get sort of outplayed by sort of the veterans and sort of people that have been playing it longer. So first tip is to stick with sort of your squad and your team. This will just enable you to sort of not always get outflanked from multiple angles, as there'll be sort of teammates around you to sort of cover you and provide cover and fire as well. You know, there may be instances where you do find yourself on the own. Just try and regroup with your squad or your teammate, and sort of then that way then you'll be able to sort of be able to take on the enemies. As you get more experience, you will be able to sort of go off a bit more solo and sort of take on objectives by yourself and everything like that. But to start off with, just as you're getting used to the game, just stick with your team and your squad and you will have sort of a better experience. However, do avoid the meat grinders. There are sometimes where you'll see your teammates just keep running down the same alleyway and just getting like one kill and then dying. Avoid that. If you see that happening, just take a step back, look at the map, and you might be able to see a few potential flank routes that you can take, and so just another route round that you might be able to come in from the side of the enemy and not sort of get involved in that meat grinder, because you will have a bad time if you go that way. Speaking of sort of you know, the mini-map and stuff like that, that is where the information is. You can get quite a lot of information from that, like where your team are, where your squad mates are, where the enemy could be potentially coming from. Also, it just, when teammates do die, they get marked on the map, so it would be like a blue X. That way then it gives you that information that there are sort of enemies nearby. If you see on the map that your teammate nearby has been killed, that can give you a sign then that somebody could be in that area, and so keep a lookout for them. And to do that, you know, there are multiple ways. Obviously, there's sort of audios from the soldiers, so you got footsteps. Once again, I'll cover that in the video where there's sort of different footstep sounds, and also these soldiers do sort of shout as well. So sometimes they do these audio cues where, you know, they shout just whatever language. If you're playing this like the USA and you hear like a Japanese soldier speaking Japanese, then you'll know that like the enemy's nearby. Or if you're playing as like the Germans and you hear like a British soldier talking, then you know there's an enemy nearby. So just keep listen out for those, and it will help you sort of be able to get the drop on those enemies as well. Well, that's it for the video. I hope you guys found it useful and sort of been able to take something away from it. If you did, make sure to drop a like. Also leave a comment down below kind of what you took away from it. Always looking to see where people are sort of picking up on things and what I can maybe do better as well. If you want to see more content like this and more tips, tricks in general for both Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 2042 when that comes out, make sure to also drop a subscribe to keep up to date with that stuff. But yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Have a good one.